Shabbat Shalom, brothers and sisters. This is part 2 of the Hebrew Israelites video. 2 weeks ago, I made part 1 of this video, and I've had tremendous response from all of you who wanted to see more of the Bible in which I describe the restoration as it will take place and where will the people come from. That is very important for us to understand. Before I get into the nitty-gritty, I want to show you some books which will be valuable to your study. The first book that I have is called Beit Yehoshua, son of Zadok, son of Daud. Now this book describes the family and the people surrounding Yehoshua, that is Jesus of Nazareth, and people around him who there were, people like Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. This book describes the people. You have heard often from the church that Luke was a Gentile, but I describe in this book that Luke was not a Gentile. I give the evidences to prove that Luke was a Hebrew, and I show you many other evidences to reveal what happened to Miriam, the mother of Yehoshua. Where did she go to after the crucifixion and resurrection of Yehoshua? So this is an important book for you to get and have in your collection, because it contains much knowledge of the families and the lineages and who's who of the renewed covenant, New Testament writing of the Nazarenes. The second book that I want you to look at is Yehoshua, the Black Messiah. My next segment is going to be about that. This book, brothers and sisters, is about who Yehoshua was, his lineage, and I prove in this why his color isn't Caucasian white, as it is described today in the churches, in the films, all this conspiracy that has gone on for the last 1500 years. I'll discuss that in the next segment. And this is the Abrahamic Study Faith Bible. It is a 2-volume Bible set. This has accurate names, accurate translation, Hebraically done, and in this Bible you can locate lands, peoples, lineages, and you can tell who's who. If a man is African, this Bible will not hide that detail for you, like other Bibles do. For instance, Moses, who was born in North Africa, we reveal his lineage. For instance, Abraham. For instance, even Terach, Abraham's father, I reveal their lineages and who they were. And I take you right back to Adam. So this is a very important tool for you to study. This contains a lot of debate material, discussion material that will be useful for you as a student of the Bible to take on any discussions, any debates with anyone in the world. And I will help you to study the scriptures. If you need any further help after purchasing the scriptures, you can come to me. So, brothers and sisters, without further ado, we are going to discuss Hebrew Israelites. Where are they going to come from? Now, as you know, most of the church today is stuck with the idea, and even people outside the church, and I'm going to name names now. People like David Yair of Brit Am, they suggest that Hebrew Israelites are going to come from Europe. Now there's millions of books being written. Even a person called Stephen Collins has written a book where he describes various people in America, in, for instance, England, in other countries of Western Europe, which he believes that there were Hebrew Israelites. He even goes so far as to say recently that the 300 Spartans may have been part of the Hebrew Israelites. However, I'm going to tell you today that none of that is entirely true. Some of it is true, all of it is definitely not true. As you will find out today from this program, they were definitely not white people, they were definitely not yellow people, and they were definitely not Europeans, as has been described by various people. And as you know, the church has ignorantly, I would suggest, followed through with this deception for the last 1500 years, when they should very well know that these people were African origin. They were not, the people of the Bible were not, quote, Europeans, they were not Asians. However, we do know that in the migrations, when Hebrew Israelites were thrown out of the land by Yahweh, we know that they went to Asia, some of them went to Europe. But however, if I came to Europe, do I become a white man? Look at my color. Do I look like a white man to you? No. So let's without further ado look at some. Let's take you to the map. I'm going to focus on the prophecy of Isaiah chapter 11 verse 11 that you see here on the board. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall set his hand the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, from Mitzrayim, from Pathros, from Cush, from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. Now, showing you this prophecy, what has that got to do with me? First of all, note that although there's got to be a one first gathering, then there will be a two second gathering. These necessarily don't have to be in order as most people think. Yahweh can make some people come in earlier and some people come later. What does that mean? That means that Yahweh can bring some of the people of the gathering in the second gathering, that is this one here, earlier. What's the proof? I'm the proof. This country here, Elam, that country is the country of Iran. That is where my forefathers were exiled. Hebrew Israelites of the Levite clan. I have come in ahead of time of the others, when we know that the first gathering hasn't even happened yet. Whilst most people think that the majority of the Jewish people today in Israel are part of the first gathering, again that is not entirely true. Because what you will find that there are certainly Yahudim, peoples in Israel who are part of Hebrew Israelites, and I'll point out that they are part of Ethiopia. Now, that is also part of the first gathering and second gathering. Look here at Cush. Cush means not only Ethiopia as it says in your Bibles, but it also means Sudan. It means Upper and Lower Nubia. Cush, if I bring you down to the map, if I let my cameraman focus on the map, Cush, and here is the red pin which is Israel, and if we look, Cush could be south of the Nile and could be going all the way across. Cush, the Cushite people or the Ethiopian people actually ruled majority of these lands that you see here, majority. In fact, from Egypt to all the way to Mauritania, Cushites did rule. Cushite was a huge kingdom. Cushite was not a small kingdom as most people think. Most scholars place them just in this region here, but that is not so. They actually ruled the entire region. And I will even say that the Ethiopians or the Cushites even went to India. As far as India, they went to Europe, they went to many places. So we know that from here they went to this side, to the east, and they ended up in India as rulers. Yes, that's correct. In the 18th century in India, there were Cushite rulers. Most people don't know that before the British turned up to take over India. So Cush is not only got a second gathering, as Yahweh has said, Cush has also got a first gathering. In both gatherings, Cush will be gathered. Today in Israel, we have the Falasha, the black Ethiopian Jews. They are part of this people that are going to be gathered back. Today in Israel, in Dimona, we have the black Hebrew Israelites. They are also part of this gathering that went from America. Now notice that in the same verse, it says that Yahweh will gather from the islands of the sea. What are islands of the sea? If my cameraman will point to the camera, I'll show you the islands of the sea. One of the islands of the sea is here, right here. the United Kingdom. Look, it's an island. That is where some of the Hebrew Israelites are. And as you can see, how did they get here? The question is, are these the white people who are living in the UK here? Or are these the black people? Well, they are slaves. They were brought in by the slave trade from Africa via this Atlantic slave trade. They went over to America. They went over to Canada. They went over to all these places. And look at this. This is a huge big island. United States of America, Canada. In Yahweh's sight, this is just an island. Okay? If you go down to Brazil, that's an island. If you go down to Australia, on the southeast, that is an island. And you know, and I know, that slaves from the Atlantic trade were taken to Western Europe in the north, and they were taken to the west, to the United States of America, and they have been there since then. Just because your name is George and your name is Michael, it does not mean that that was your original name. Your original name was not George, and it wasn't Michael, and it wasn't David. So you need to go back and search out your roots, because your name was something completely different. You came from these lands, this continent. This continent should rightly be called the continent of the Shemites, the sons of Shem, and the sons of Ham, Hemites. Both these sons intermarried. Both Shemites and Hemites intermarried, and they ended up in this continent. They even ended up in Europe. How did they end up in Europe? How did they end up in Europe? Well, they ended up in Europe because when the Muslim Empire pushed forward, they conquered certain peoples in Africa. They then made them into an army. These were what were termed the Moors and the Berbers. They then used these people to push into Spain here. And they pushed into Spain and they conquered Spain. They even conquered Turkey. Istanbul fell. If you remember, in the 15th century, Istanbul was the first one to fall. Then Spain fell. These were what was described as the Berbers and the Moors. The Berbers and the Moors, friends, were African people. They were converted forcefully into Islam, and they were then used as armies because they were great fighters. Remember, great fighting did not develop from nowhere. It was in the Hebrew blood. Hebrew Israelite blood had great fighters. You can